Good morning. It's an honor to once again be a part of this ceremony. You may know this year is the 150th anniversary of the start of the Civil War. And we gather here in Monument Park in front of the the monument that was erected in 1916. You might see the top of it through the tree behind me. That was erected to commemorate those who, in our area, who fought in the Civil War. And in 1861, the village of Peekskill at that time had a population of about 4,000 and was the largest section of what was then called Portland Town, whose overall population was around 11,000. Of that population, 665 men from Portland Town served in the Civil War, and 91 died in action. At the time this monument was erected in 1916, there were still 130 of those veterans still alive here in the area. It is from this time in history that Memorial Day has its roots. It was important then, as it is now, to pay tribute to those brave men and women who gave their lives in service to our nation and to protect the freedom we enjoy today. We erect monuments and display the names of those who perished in war and hold ceremonies like we are having today to honor those individuals, to thank them for what they did and remember the sacrifice they made. However, we also stand here today to remind those who are living that their sacrifice was not in vain. It serves to remind us how it is up to us to carry on and continue to fight for the principles that the nation was built on, the principles they fought to protect, and that is how we can best honor their memory. No one understood that better than President Abraham Lincoln, someone we feel a close connection to here in Peekskill. In a famous speech that we all know that he gave long before the creation of the National Memorial Day at Gettysburg, he said, "But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little know nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they fought here, have thus so far nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause of which they gave the last full measure of devotion, that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from the earth." We have to remember that each and every day, especially today, and I'm glad to be here to help you do that. God bless America. Thank you very much.
Tony, is there anything you wanted to add to that? I know you were here to give some comments about as a person of the Lincoln Society.
Thank you very much. My name is Tony Seideman. I'm president of the Lincoln Society of Peekskill. It's an honor and a privilege to be here today. The Lincoln Society is the nation's first and oldest Lincoln Society. It was established in 1903, and its purpose is to celebrate Lincoln's life and its influence on our lives today. And to prepare for this, I thought of Peekskill's history and how history is a living, growing, breathing thing. When I moved to Peekskill a dozen years ago, and I talked with people about Peekskill's history, there were comments that Peekskill might not have had much of an abolitionist movement and that things weren't that focused. Well, we did research, and what we found was the name of a man named Hawley Green. And then we found that Hawley Green had been buried at Hillside Cemetery. And when we visited Hillside Cemetery, we discovered the gravesite of his son, William Green. Hawley Green was 50 years old at the beginning of the Civil War. His son was much younger. And William Green, an African-American, served in the Civil War. And I also reread the 3-minute speech that Lincoln gave when he visited Peekskill. And 3 of the words he said really struck me. He said, "Without your sustaining hands." And what he was saying was that democracy is a group experience. Democracy is hard work, it's sometimes very tough work, but it's a participatory experience. And we need to remember that one of America's most important firsts was the fact that it held a presidential election in the midst of the Civil War, and that the soldiers were fighting and dying and knew that they would be fighting and dying, voted to continue that war because they wanted to be in it to the end. And what I also noticed as I walked through Hillside Cemetery was that the stones speak in the same way the stones here speak. To read the names, to see the people, to see how young some of them were when they died and gave their lives for our country. And what I know also is that history is present in all of our lives at any moment. And I would ask everyone here, if you know a veteran or know someone who knows history or have family images or portraits, preserve those. Talk to the people you know. Bring that history to your life, because the way we live with that history is how we carry our country forward and how we create our future. When you think of people in our military services, see how you can give your sustaining hands to them. And that's one of the purposes of the Lincoln Society. So I thank you very much for being here, and I ask you as you drive by that monument every time to think of the sacrifices that so many people made in the Civil War and how different our nation is today. Thank you.